First of all, does the Isle of Man now have a silver bullet to become net carbon neutral by 2050?
Oh, I wish there was a silver bullet. No, there's no such thing when it comes to climate action. It is fearsomely complex. It takes time and resource and commitment and needs to be followed through for some decades. So, silver bullet, no. A really credible action plan that I believe has true government commitment behind it, and hopefully commitment from everyone on the Isle of Man, yes.
So within the time and resources constraints, do you feel this is the best work that could have been produced?
I believe so. You probably wouldn't expect me to say anything else. I'm proud of the report that I led and independently submitted to government, and I'm really delighted by the sense of commitment and the budget and resources that the government is putting in the first year alone, and I see every indication will follow through on the action plan for years to come.
3 months ago, roughly, in October, you spoke to Manx Radio and you were asked if you felt 6 months was long enough for this process to be carried out. Do you still hold the view that it is, and that the findings wouldn't be substantially different if there was a longer time period given?
Most governments, most nations have taken a lot longer to prepare a climate change action plan. I'm a great believer that once you make your mind up, just go for it. I don't think there would be anything substantially different if we'd taken longer. I think that energy and momentum that was put into it is very beneficial, and I think that will continue. The analytical team I worked with were extremely motivated and hardworking, and they came from all across government and is a great resource for the future. So, no, clearly in the time available, it left some evidence gaps, which we were very clear about and wrote into my report. Those part of the coming year is to fill those evidence gaps in order to substantiate, to lay very firm foundations for the action plan in succeeding years beyond that.
To quote a bit from your foreword, you said you take full responsibility for the content of this report in the spirit with which this endeavour was undertaken. You're very well aware of its shortcomings and accept there will be some errors. And as you've said, the team and yourself continue to seek out challenge and inspiration to improve it further. What comes of your role now that 6 months is up, and what's next, do you think?
Well, it's for government to decide what my continuing role would be. To the degree that I hope that commitment can be given by everyone on the Isle of Man to this climate change action plan, which is ambitious but also realistic, I would be very prepared to give my continuing commitment in some role or other into the future as well. But that's still to be discussed.
Is it ambitious enough, do you think?
I believe so. It's based on the very best science created by the United Nations, their climate change program, and used as the foundation for the Paris Agreement back in 2016. That is the foundation of this climate change action plan, so I think it's founded on the very best evidence we have globally.
Thank you very much, Chief Minister. So this is a Cabinet Office report. What happens next in terms of parliamentary process?
Right, well, it'll be going to January Tynwald for the Tynwald members to debate the report, the Council of Ministers' response to Professor Curran's report on the actions to go forward. And if Tynwald members back the Council of Ministers' proposals, then it'll be full steam ahead. Obviously, there's phase one, of which we've announced £10 million of funding. There's 60 actions which we'll be able to take forward straight away. Professor Curran has alluded to there was holes in some of the evidence that needed more detailed analysis, so that'll be phase two will be worked on over the next coming 12 months so that we can then take the plan further. But it's full steam ahead, subject to Tynwald approval this month.
Do you anticipate that Tynwald members will get on board with this report and its findings?
Well, you can never totally take for granted the support of Tynwald members, but obviously we do our utmost to work with them, to explain, to share the report, to discuss, and the feedback I've had so far has been exceptionally positive. But I'm never arrogant enough to presume the support of Tynwald until I've got it won in Tynwald Court.
If this is adopted and it is progressed by Tynwald, what does it say about the Manx government's current strategy on climate change, do you think?
Well, it shows that we're fully committed to taking our international responsibilities incredibly seriously. This is a worldwide problem that, if we don't tackle now, will give major repercussions for the next generation, and we've got to get it right now. So we're hopefully leading the way with other countries, ensuring that we do our bit. Okay, we're only a small island of 85,000, but if everyone works together from other countries with a similar strategy, then we can do our bit to help preserve the world going forward.
Is there a concession that the previous government strategy on climate change hasn't worked, perhaps?
Well, it was probably a step in the right direction. Things change, information, evidence changes, and it's now accepted. I accepted that there was a climate change. I recognise that in May 2019, and in a very short period of time, we have managed to get a really good report from Professor Curran, and government has then responded with its actions on how it intends to go on that journey to achieve the recommendations made in Professor Curran's report. But I'd like to stress this cannot be just the government of the Isle of Man on its own. This has to be everyone on the Isle of Man doing their bit, taking part, and making decisions about how they're going to change elements of their life to ensure that we all together hit the target for 2050 of zero carbon emissions.
Net zero.
Net zero carbon emissions.
What ensures that this plan is implemented over its life? Because it's a 30-year time span. Are there going to be bits enshrined in Manx law?
Yes, we'll be taking a climate change bill to June Tynwald to get that approved, and then there will be stages. I think if you look at the programme for government at this moment in time, we haven't got the exact formula laid out, but if you look how the programme for government works, it shows clear milestones, what key performance indicators are, what success looks like, who takes responsibility. All departments in government and monthly review their responsibilities towards that plan, and I think we can do something very similar with the climate change bill to ensure that government does what it says on the tin, and things will change. New technologies will come out, and it may alter the way we do things going forward. We have to have an open mind. We can't say this is in tablets of stone, but with the best evidence that we've got from someone as highly respected as Professor Curran, we feel we're taking the island in the right direction as quickly as possible.
The rollout of this plan, if it's adopted, will obviously span several successive administrations. How will it be future-proofed? How will the politicians of the island's future be held accountable, really?
Well, I think obviously we will be setting the foundations and a clear roadmap on how this is to happen. Now, obviously, I can't force the next administration to do exactly what we've set up, but I would be highly surprised if they weren't even more intense on the plan, taking it forward and ensuring it works. This is in everyone's interest. The whole of the population, both on the Isle of Man and the whole of the world, need to ensure that we reduce that we have the net zero by 2050. So it's incredibly important. I think it's the chances of the next administration totally switching off from this would be absurd. So I'm discounting that straight away. The commitment must be there for all of the Isle of Man, for future generations, to make sure they have a future.
We have to talk about budgets, obviously. £10 million has been set for the first year, is that correct? Professor Curran's recommended thereafter it's more to the tune of £25 million a year. It's a pretty serious undertaking. Probably understatement of the day. Yeah.
It is indeed, yes. We've found £10 million, some from revenue, some from capital, from capital accounts to start the ball rolling, shall we say.
Does that displace spending elsewhere or budgets elsewhere?
No, it's money that we've found. We're not cutting other departments' spending to find this 10 million. This is money that we've taken from various sources. But it's a start. It's 10 million for the first year. But after that, it could be. It's a partnership, and we say 25 million for the next 10 years, 25 million from government and 25 million from business, the business community working together to develop technology. For example, we will be going out for expressions of interest for people to develop onshore wind farms on the island. That will be private money. It's profitable now, it's cost effective, there's no need for government to put money in, so that's where some of the private investment can come from, and maybe 20 megawatts will be the plan in the short term. By 2035, the target is to have 75% of our electricity energy generation from renewable sources. So these are fairly ambitious targets, and an awful lot of people say, oh, it should be done within 10 years. And I think when you read the report, you will see the enormity of what has to change. And we've come up with a plan it's achievable if we all pull together, but it can't be done by government on its own. I must stress that.
A quote from the response to Professor Curran's report. A number of variables come into play when assessing the cost impact of the recommended measures, including timescales and, of course, the practicalities of delivery. The cynic in me says this already sounds like government's setting itself up to fail perhaps a bit here, do you think?
No, I think it's a recognition that technologies change. I was in Ireland seeing the Taoiseach a couple of months ago, and I was looking at their proposals, and they've developed new technology which they're trialling in Hawaii now, where they can generate a wind turbine, a floating wind turbine, and part of it is like an upturned cup with air trapped underneath, which generates electricity with the wave movement. Now that's not anchored into the seabed. It's not fixed permanently into the seabed. It's sort of anchored and floats, and that's new technology which could radically change the way we generate electric car batteries. We think there's going to be a breakthrough soon where you'll be able to get up to 5 times the range of the current batteries. So things can change, and all we're trying to say is that, yes, this is our plan, this is what we're wanting to do, but at some stage we're not setting it in tablets of stone, because it would be pointless exercise saying we are going to do this when some unknown new technology could come in and revolutionise the way that we go on, we take the island forward in reaching net zero carbon emissions.
In the report from Professor Curran, there's a table depicting the co-benefits of becoming net carbon neutral by 2050. Also some of the drawbacks of doing so, for lack of a better word. The main issue really is about money. Is the Quayle administration going to put taxpayers' money where its mouth is, do you think, and commit to this?
Well, we already have with 10 million straight away. When you look at a small jurisdiction of 85,000 people, 10 million is a lot of money, but we're saying that's just for the first year, and then phase 2 of the plan will be looking at how will we fund this going forward, and then it'll be into the next administrations to carry on that. We've started the journey. We've set up a very good plan. It's been worked on by Professor Curran. If you look at his pedigree, he's been advising the Scottish government on how for their responsibilities. So we have taken the very best information and advice on how we can go on this plan. We will be asking him to continue to advise us on our strategy going forward to ensure that we're on the right trail. But to be credible, we've got to work together. This isn't a quick fix. This is a long-term piece of work, and we are 100% committed to delivering on this policy.
Where do you see Professor Curran's role now, after the end of what is, from my understanding, was a 6-month remit? What's next?
Well, we'll be setting up a committee to run this, and I very much hope that Professor Curran will be able to give advice to that committee as we go forward and develop phase 2 of the plan. Phase 1 is set out. We've got 60 actions that people can see that we're going to work on, but phase 2 is going to be developed in the next year, and we sincerely hope he'll be able to give advice to that committee. The
Isle of Man's under big financial pressure in lots of other respects, public sector pensions, Brexit, another overspend in the health department, or forecasted overspend in the health department. Why is this a priority?
Well, it's the future. If you look at the projections, if we allow the world to overheat, then there'll be a very poor future for our children. And this administration and me personally have always been about intergenerational fairness. We must ensure that the administration and the island that we hand over to the next administration and the next generation is better than when we found it, and that's what I'm working hard to achieve.
So the plan is a climate change programme is to be established with a political steer. Does that basically mean a department with a minister, or is it different from that?
It'll be cross-government. It won't just be one department. All governments will need to work on this, and we will be bringing in private sector to be on that committee too, so it won't be 100% government. As I've said from day one, this is a whole island. For this to succeed, it must be everyone on the Isle of Man getting behind it.
Just finally, the elephant in the room, really, and lots of the critics of government on this issue have spoken about this, is plans to explore for natural gas in the island's territorial waters. Is this at loggerheads with what this report is advocating, do you think?
No, well, first and foremost, there's an if there. We have to the company Kroger are doing trials this year to ensure that the product, the gas, is there. But if you look at the report, it's envisaged that 2035 will be still importing gas. Gas is the cleanest of the fossil fuels. So 75%, the target is by 35, will be renewable energy. But we will still need gas. Now, we're currently importing gas from Norway. We're paying royalties to the Norwegian government. 6% of that gas is lost on the journey. So from an environmental point of view, it's cleaner to use it if it's 20 kilometres off your shoreline. It's going to be cleaner to the world environment that we use our own. We'll be able to save money from the royalties that we're not paying to the Norwegian government that will be paid to the island.
Can you see why people think there's a hypocrisy there, though?
Yeah, well, if we weren't going to be, if it was oil, and we're saying we're doing away with oil, yes, there would be hypocrisy. But we are recognising that gas will be a crossover fuel for the Isle of Man as part of our plan going forward. So we need gas to make these changes, and it's the cleanest of the fossil fuels. And surely it's more logical that if you've got your own, that you use your own rather than importing somebody else's.
Just finally, Professor Curran, you were asked about this in October, and your answer was that it was a political decision. It wasn't within your remit to comment. Are we allowed a personal opinion on whether you think that's hypocrisy?
No, I'm a scientist. I base all my judgments, and particularly my advice on climate change, on well-founded evidence, scientific research, and the results that come out of that. My own independent report refers to the potential for gas field development in terms of the possible methane emissions, in terms of the production and the transmission of the gas, and it makes an estimate of what that leakage might be, and that if that industry ever came about, it would need to be offset in the way that many other emissions on the island may be rather difficult to reduce to zero even by 2050. So they need to be balanced by natural sequestration, which is why it's particularly important to start moving early and quickly on tree planting, woodland generation, the efficacy and good functioning of ecosystems and the services they deliver, a marine plan to do the same with natural sequestration in the surrounding seas. So as long as, my view, in the remit I was given for my report, as long as there's capacity in that natural sequestration to allow a bit of headroom for any new business that might start on the island where the emissions present considerable difficulty in reducing them to zero, then that was my remit. I hope I fulfilled that, and I don't deal in personal views.